Exposed, the incredible moment a Mafia boss discovers his hidden daughter homeless with a baby. Tony, the bull Romano, stood at the entrance of his upscale cafe, the crisp autumn air biting at his skin. It was another day in his new life, one he had painstakingly built, trying to distance himself from the shadows of his past. But deep within, the name he had earned through intimidation lingered like a malevolent specter. As he greeted the regulars with a smile, tension coiled tightly in his chest, gnawing at the hard-won peace he fought so desperately to maintain. With each coffee poured and pastry served, his mind slipped back to the darkness he would always struggle to escape. Regret festered inside him. For years, he had ruled through fear, dismantling lives without a second thought. And now, he was a man striving for legitimacy in a world where his reputation echoed sinister whispers. The guilt lay heavy on his shoulders, a reminder that he was not the law-abiding citizen he pretended to be but once a man who led with iron fists. Just as he stepped off the curb to cross the street, a heart-stopping sight froze him in place. A young woman sat huddled on the sidewalk, tattered clothes draping over skeletal limbs. Cradling a tiny baby, she looked hollow and defeated. An electric shock coursed through him, urging him to move forward. Abruptly, the world around him faded into a dull murmur as recognition pierced through the fog of his past. Mia. His daughter, kneeling before her on that unforgiving pavement, shame washed over him like a cold wave. Mia's eyes, once full of life, had turned dull with despair. Her plight was all too clear, a homeless single mother, bearing the scars of a life shaped by choices made in darkness. With her gaze locked on his, it felt as if everything he had built was teetering on the edge of collapse. The emotional turmoil was suffocating. He felt torn between the fierce paternal instinct igniting within and the unyielding loyalty to the life he knew. "Dad?" she whispered, disbelief clinging to her words as if uttering them could shatter the transient silence. Her fragility sent a fierce pang of longing through him. This was the child he lost to chaos long ago. Something in him snapped, igniting an urge to fight against the demons of his past. His mind raced. How did it come to this? It was a question he couldn't answer without confronting the truths he'd buried deep within. Determined to help, Tony devised a plan to support displaced families like Mia by organizing a fundraiser. However, every move he made was calculated, and whispers among old associates started to reach his ears, each rumor dripping with suspicion. They expected him to stay within the confines of the life he had created, a life of power and control. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Tony wrestled with the duality of who he was and who he wanted to be, he received chilling messages from those who felt disrespected by his choices. The shadows that haunted his past pulsated, demanding his blood allegiance while Mia battled for her own survival each day, an unnerving reminder of the consequences of his dark decisions. Could he truly pivot towards redemption, or was his grip on the criminal underbelly too strong to sever? With each sleepless night, the weight of living a double life grew unbearable, terror and longing intertwining like vines around his heart. Just as he began to ponder tearing down the walls of silence and vulnerability, a message from an old friend turned foe shattered his moment of clarity. The threat was unmistakable. They wouldn't let him walk away unscathed. The walls were closing in, and the stakes had reached crippling heights. Waves of uncertainty and desperation churned in his chest as Tony faced the undeniable truth. How far was he willing to go for a daughter he feared he hardly knew? Would he risk everything to protect her, or would the cold tendrils of his past engulf them both, dragging Mia back into the dark fate he never wanted for her? With each pulse of his heart, the question loomed larger than ever, leaving only echoes of tension and dread. Tony's heart raced as he stood on the edge of an abyss carved from sins long buried. He was acutely aware that his every decision now had far-reaching implications. The threat he faced wasn't just from his past associates but from a harsh reality: his daughter needed him. She was standing at the precipice of despair, and he couldn't afford to remain a mere observer. His thoughts cascaded over one another, images of Mia enveloped in rags, the tiny life cradled in her arms, a life he was responsible for bringing into this world. Tony's mind spun as he recalled the days when power and fear rang true in his veins. Yet, those memories were nothing but ghosts whispered among shadows. In this moment, the machinations of his old life felt grotesquely out of place. Trying to regain some semblance of control, he formulated a plan. He had to confront the reality of Mia's situation, her vulnerability, and, in turn, his own. This was his chance to redefine what his legacy could be. As days passed, he found himself frequenting shelters and outreach programs, gathering information on resources that could bring Mia and her child back from the brink. It wasn't just about wealth, it was about stabilizing the very foundation of their shattered relationship, but dark whispers from his former life grew louder. Old contacts began questioning his loyalty, and rumors of his new ventures began to circulate. His mind raced. Did pursuing redemption come with a cost? The chilling thought that perhaps the people he severed ties with still held power over him gnawed at his resolve. Their threats bred anxiety, filling every thought with doubt. Could he trust his instincts? Was he willing to turn his back on the life he once knew? Sleep eluded him. Each night stretched into an eternity of tossing and turning, the weight of his decisions casting shadows over his psyche. The stakes escalated. The scribbled messages from associates became increasingly ominous, veiled threats echoing in his ears. "You can't just walk away, Tony. You'll regret it if you betray the family." The family. The very people who had dragged him into chaos, now seeking his loyalty as he embraced the vestiges of repentance. An unexpected visitor at the cafe reshaped his spiraling thoughts. A fellow restaurateur, Sarah, noticed the fatigue etched into Tony's features. Recognizing a man grappling with his demons, she extended an offer to help him through the turmoil. Her sincerity struck a chord, igniting a spark of hope in the chaos surrounding him. She had once faced her own crossroads, and now she stood ready to guide him through the storm. "Tony," she said softly, "you have a chance to rewrite your story. Allow yourself the vulnerability of letting others in. We're all searching for redemption in one way or another." Her words lodged deep within him, igniting a flicker of courage. Was he finally ready to forge connections that mattered, to pull away from isolation? As the days turned into nights, the lines between the life he wanted and the life he had once known began to blur. His conversations with Mia became deeper, unearthing pain, but also cherished remnants of dreams he once had for her. Each shared moment chipped away at the wall built from years of neglect. Yet, just as he began to feel the embers of hope ignite, he received word that his old associates were growing restless. The silence he'd crafted was about to shatter. The ultimatum was clear: return, or face the consequences. The weight of his past was closing in, threatening to pull him back into the darkness. Every moment counted now. He had to decide. Would he embrace the life he envisioned for himself and Mia, or let the ghosts from his past do what they did best? The clock was ticking, and choices had to be made. Lives depended on it. Amidst the night's oppressive silence, a single thought echoed louder than the rest. The time had come to face his demons, but would he emerge triumphant or be consumed by them once more? Tony leaned against the peeling wall of an alleyway, trying to map out his next move while tuning out the distant sounds of late-night revelry. The visceral reality of his situation crashed over him like a wave. His past was a tumultuous sea, and now, standing on the precipice once again, he was being pulled back by currents he thought he'd escaped. Each reminder of his former life felt like a noose tightening around his throat, whispering enticingly that darkness would be easier than enduring the painful light of trying to make amends. His thoughts wandered to Mia, who had become a complex puzzle that tugged relentlessly at his heart. She was not only his daughter but a mirror reflecting his failures and aspirations. He longed to reach out and grasp the pieces of her life that were scattered across the desolation she lived in. Yet, doing so meant risking everything: his safety, his nascent hope for redemption, and even the fragile connection forming between him and Sarah, who had unexpectedly become a confidant. Sarah's words haunted him like specters: "Allow yourself the vulnerability of letting others in." Vulnerability, what a perilous craving that was. He was not the man to lean on others, the notion itself felt foreign, unwelcome in the fortress of his well-constructed bravado. The shadows of his old life threatened to dismantle the very foundations he started to build, and he could almost taste the taste of vengeance he had once reveled in. Returning to his old associates could secure his position, but it would simultaneously erase any progress he had made in stepping toward the light that on a whim, he decided to visit one of the shelters he had learned about, an unassuming place nestled between two large buildings, filled with those searching for solace and warmth. As he entered, the heavy scent of damp clothing and worn-out souls hit him. It was a stark contrast to the polished tables and sparkling cutlery of the upscale restaurants he once ruled over. Yet, here was life raw in its most authentic form. Tony moved through the aisles, watching the delicate exchanges of hope between volunteers and families clinging together. For the first time in years, he felt something within him stir. Lessons from his old life began to amalgamate with the new. Touching lives, feeding souls, and easing burdens, these actions mirrored the power he once wielded, yet they strummed a softer, nobler chord within him that he approached a volunteer, a woman in her late 40s with kind eyes who was sorting donations. "I'm here to help," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "What can I do?" She blinked up at him, perhaps sensing the graveness beneath his words. "We can always use extra hands. Are you ready for some honest work?" There was no judgment in her gaze, only an opening, a chance for him to become part of something larger. As he took on this unfamiliar role, he found himself rediscovering the joy in serving. Working side by side with others seeking redemption made his own feels imminent. He realized each plate he served, each conversation he shared, was an attempt to exorcise the ghosts of his past. Yet, it wasn't tea without complication. Every kind gesture tugged at his anxieties, bringing him nearer to a confrontation he could not delay. His thoughts turned again to Mia, and within the very act of caring for others, a resolve began to crystallize. He could either return to the vicious cycle of his past or forge a new narrative grounded in responsibility. He wanted to tell Mia that he was strong enough to fight not just for her, but for other lost souls in the process. The night was thick with uncertainty as he wandered home, his hands still filled with the texture of materials that clung to the soul of those he served. His phone buzzed. A text scrolled across the screen. "Remember your promise, Tony. You'll regret it if you walk away." Would he choose to confront the fraught legacy of his past associates, or would he summon enough courage to step completely into the unfamiliar light he sought? All of a sudden, the flicker of hope he'd managed to grasp wavered. He turned into his building, realizing every step he took was not just forward, it was a descent into an inevitable showdown with the darkness surrounding him. And just as quickly, the air felt charged with possibility. The time for a decision was upon him, and the contours of the wild world he had fought against began to blur with the choices before him. But would he emerge intact, ready to reshape his future, or would he be drawn back, like so many before him, into the abyss he had tried so earnestly to escape? Tony walked through the door of his apartment, a swirl of conflicting emotions raging within him. The warmth from serving others stripped away some of his protective layers, but as he slumped into the worn-out chair, he grappled with the tightening grips of doubt. He couldn't shake the image of Mia from his mind, her face, a veil of innocence marred by his decisions. The darkness of his past loomed larger than ever, and every promise he had made to change surged as a reminder of the life he had left behind. Resilience stirred deep inside, but it felt fragile, as if it could fracture at any moment. He pulled out his phone again, only to stare at the screen with a heavy heart. The text from his past associates hung there like a specter, a voice whispering in the back of his mind, reminding him of who he used to be. "You'll regret it if you walk away." What if that voice spoke truth? What if they wouldn't allow him to walk away at all? Pushing the thoughts aside, Tony rose to his feet, his own agitation igniting a desire for movement, for action, clarity. He grabbed his jacket and stepped back outside into the night, the city laden with an unyielding energy. As he walked, memories from his past lashed at him, risky deals made in dimly lit bars, the thrill of power beckoning like a siren's song. Yet intertwined was the image of his daughter. Drawing strength from their connection, he found himself heading towards the shelter once more, his heart pounding with each step. He needed this commitment. No more half measures. He thought of Sarah, her contagious enthusiasm for making a difference, and how that enthusiasm might quiet the more chaotic corners of his mind. She believed in the power of change. Could he, Tony, a man bred in darkness, somehow embody the same philosophy? Through the doors of the shelter, he plunged into a world of service once more, where laughter mingled with sorrow, and kindness punctured the air like arrows of hope. He maneuvered between tables, serving food, sharing smiles with those who allowed themselves a moment of light amidst their realities. Here, he discovered a reflection of his own fight. Each meal served became a silent promise to himself and to Mia, a step towards making amends. There was a rhythm to the work, serving calmed his frayed nerves. As he chatted with those seated, he heard their stories, tales of loss, dreams deferred, journeys to find a safer path. Each word, each shared experience burrowed deeper into his restless soul, intertwining with his longing for Mia's forgiveness. Comparison settled heavily had he not faced his own demons, littered with shattered dreams and dashed hopes. After a particularly engrossing conversation with a young man who had battled addiction, Tony felt an emboldened sense of purpose surge. Perhaps this wasn't just about him, perhaps he could build a community of healing, a space where others could reclaim their narratives. Could he stand at the helm of such an effort? Here he was, surrounded by the same fragility he felt within himself, connecting through shared losses and hopes. But the specter of his old life wouldn't stay quiet forever. Just as momentum gathered, an all-too-familiar figure grazed his peripheral vision, a face he had tried to forget emerging from the shadows of his past. One of his old associates, a tall man with a snake-like grace, beckoned him from the corner with an inscrutable smile, a grim reminder of the chains he so desperately sought to abandon. The moment hung tantalizingly between two worlds. He could choose the path of power, a way back to the life he once knew, or he could forge ahead into the unknown that hinted at redemption. Tony hesitated, caught between battling instincts, unsure whether he could turn his back once more without repercussions. The weight of his two lives pressed down upon him. Decisions were not simply personal anymore. They were intertwined with Mia's future and the glimmers of hope he saw in the shelter. Would he summon the strength to confront the ghosts threatening to drag him back? Or would he find his place amidst the light, risking it all for a chance to reclaim his potential as a father, a guide, a beacon? The air thickened, anticipation crackling around him as the past awaited on the precipice of a decision made in the liminal space of his reality. Tony stood frozen, the thrumming pulse of indecision resonating in his chest. The familiar serpent-like figure, Nathan, loomed just outside the edge of his awareness. Nathan, once a friend, had been a messenger of reckless ambitions, always whispering promises that danced on the knife's edge of legality. Now, that face held the weight of a life he was desperate to leave behind. Every instinct screamed at him to slip back into the comforting embrace of anonymity among the shelter's patrons, to lose himself in the camaraderie of shared humanity. But something else stirred within him, a flicker of rebellion against the very chains that had once bonded him. He could feel the shifting tide of his own identity, the push from the man he longed to be versus the shadow of who he had been. "Tony," Nathan called out, his voice oily with familiarity. "I see you've been busy playing daddy to the downtrodden. You really think that's how you're going to fix things?" The disdain dripped from his words like venom, eliciting a profound unease in Tony. Tony clenched his fists, craving the thrill of confrontation, yet hesitating as his gaze darted back toward the shelter. Inside, vibrant laughter contrasted sharply with Nathan's venomous sarcasm, a tangible reminder of the good he could still pursue. That laughter belonged to people whom he respected, who had begun to see him not for his past but for the man he was trying to become. "Leave me alone, Nathan. I'm not that man anymore." The words erupted from his lips, surprising even himself. He had claimed those same words countless times before, but never had he felt the weight of them so sharply. Nathan chuckled, stepping closer, his condescending grin wide. "Really? You think setting a few tables and handing out food is enough to wash away your sins? They're just going to drag you back. You belong with us, Tony. You know it. It's your blood." At that moment, Tony was engulfed by his memories. The identity he had shed like an old coat clung to him like a ghost, reminders of nights filled with exhilaration, smoke, and the blare of sirens. Yet, within that haze, a delicate voice rose, piercing through the disarray. Mia's face surfaced, soft and tender, her innocence stark against the chaos of his past. It steadied him, grounding him to his newfound purpose. Blood doesn't decide who we are, Nathan. Choices do, he said with palpable conviction, feeling empowered with each word. You don't get to define my future. I'm not interested in going back. Nathan's smile faltered, the facade of easygoing charm cracking, revealing a flash of something dangerous lurking in the depths of his gaze. Think carefully, Tony. You can't just turn away from your past without consequences, he warned, his tone now sharp and tinged with menace. Tony's heart raced as the dread of repercussions gripped him. He could feel the vibrant life he had begun to build withering at the thought of conflict, the fear of losing the fragile trust he had nurtured. But standing firm, he realized that the true peril lay in succumbing to fear, in allowing his past to dictate his future. As Nathan took a step back, sizing him up with a predatory smile, Tony felt a rush of adrenaline. He stepped forward, ready to protect this newfound path, this burgeoning identity unfurling with each breath he took. Get out of here, Nathan. I'm done with you. Done with everything you stand for. With that declaration, he felt the walls of his former life tremble, and perhaps, just maybe, the first unfurling blossoms of freedom began to emerge. He turned his back on Nathan, the closing of a door echoing in his mind as he walked inside the shelter, propelled by determination, but as he entered, he was unaware that Nathan hadn't retreated entirely. He had a plan, a last desperate gambit to reclaim what he believed was his. The shadows in the corners of the shelter whispered uncertainty, and Tony sensed that his battle was far from over. A new challenge awaited him, one that could not only jeopardize his fragile progress but could also threaten the life he had fought so hard to reclaim. Was he ready to face whatever Nathan had in store? The fight for his future had only just begun. The atmosphere inside the shelter felt like a safe cocoon, a stark contrast to the storm brewing just outside. Tony's heart continued to race as he stepped through the door, the warmth enveloping him like an embrace. He took a deep breath, grounding himself in the moment, reminding himself that he had chosen this path for a reason. The laughter and jovial banter of the patrons wrapped around him, a tapestry of new beginnings that pushed back against the shadows of his past, but even as he engaged in small talk with familiar faces, his mind buzzed with the threat Nathan posed. It wasn't just a person he feared, it was what Nathan represented, the reckless decisions that could unravel everything he had built with painstaking care. As he handed out meals in the cramped dining area, he fought an internal battle. Every laugh, every story shared amplified his resolve, yet guilt crept in like fog, whispering doubts. Were his efforts here merely a facade masking his failure to confront his true self? Mia slipped into his thoughts, her laughter a melody of hope. He focused on her as he dealt with his emotions, allowing her memory to reignite his commitment. What would she think if she saw him now? Would she acknowledge the good he was trying to manifest, or would the shadow of his past taint her view? Those questions rooted him further, anchoring him to the idea of redemption. The night grew deeper, and just when Tony thought he could shake the feeling of Nathan's impending doom, a server ran to him, her face a mask of concern. Tony. There's a situation in the back. A woman she's causing a scene. We can't handle it. The server's eyes were wide with alarm, and Tony sensed instinctively that this wasn't just any woman. His muscles tightened. What if Nathan had already made his move to disrupt the delicate peace he had cultivated? Show me, Tony said, his voice steady despite the urgency within. As he entered the back room, it came to life with chaos. A young woman was shouting, her voice tinged with desperation, eyes scanning the room for something or someone. The sight of her sent a jolt through Tony's system. She looked like she had been through hell, wearing tattered clothes that echoed his past, the kind of disarray that marked a person who had lost everything. But more than that, as their gazes met, an unsettling recognition dawned on him. Help me. Please. I need to find my baby. Her voice broke, tears streaming down her cheeks, unraveling the fury she had worn like armor. Tony's heart raced, flooding with empathy as he realized this was not only a plea for help but a call that resonated with the very essence of what he was trying to accomplish here. "Where is your baby?" he asked, his tone calming as he stepped forward, willing to bridge the gap of fear and uncertainty. But the woman's panic surged. "They took him. They didn't. I can't. He needs me." Her words spiraled into frantic sobs. As she fell into despair, Tony felt the weight of her struggle resonate with his own. He understood the depth of what losing someone could mean. It would shatter him, just as the thought of losing his newfound identity did. Here was a chance to confront not only this woman's plight but his own demons as well. "Listen to me," he said firmly, finding a strange strength in the chaos. "We're going to find him. Tell me everything you remember about when you last saw him." Time felt suspended as he leaned into the task ahead. He could see the flicker of resolve igniting within her as she began to recount the details, each word threading together a tapestry of desperation and hope. In that moment, Tony wasn't just helping another, he was actively choosing to fight for something meaningful, forging a path away from Nathan's shadow. But as he began to formulate a plan, a chilling thought loomed over him. Was this woman part of Nathan's scheme? Was this an orchestrated act designed to sever him from his newfound life? The seeds of doubt sprouted within him, mixing with determination. He had come so far, it couldn't be a coincidence. Tony stood at the precipice of action, uncertain yet resolute, aware that each decision carried weight beyond his own experience. The clock was ticking, and the shadows were closing in. This was not the end, but a rolling wave of uncertainty ready to crash. Would he be able to navigate this challenge while keeping his new identity intact? The moment of truth was at hand, and he felt the stirring of confrontation nearing. Tony's mind raced as the woman's gaze flickered across the room, desperation oozing from her very core. Each frantic breath she took seemed to echo with his own unresolved fears. He was treading a fine line, balancing the needs of a stranger against the weight of his own past. The chaotic din of the shelter faded into a muffled background as he focused on her, identifying the raw determination hidden beneath the fear. "Tell me everything," he urged gently yet firmly, feeling the air shift, as though destiny hung in the balance. Her tremulous voice began to unravel the story, threading words that painted a picture of turmoil. "I was at the park. I just turned my back, and then he was gone." Tears flowed freely as she detailed her day, each frantic mention of her child tightening Tony's chest further. He dreamt of little else but stability, yet here was proof of how fragile such a thing could be. Listening closely, he realized this crisis was not merely about a lost baby, it was a reflection of their shared struggle. It mirrored his fear of losing everything he had worked so hard to create, a stable life free from the darkness that Nathan represented. "Did you see anyone suspicious? Anyone who seemed out of place?" He kept his tone steady, channeling his determination to find clarity. He needed to steady her emotions while quelling the doubts creeping into his thoughts. Her response was a stammer of sounds rather than coherent words. The more anxious she became, the less he could separate his instincts from the gnawing doubt planted by Nathan's looming presence. His resolve faltered for a moment, testing the limits of his decision to dive in headfirst. She gasped, grabbing his arm. "I'm sorry. I just can't lose him." The chill in her voice slipped into Tony's skin, igniting a familiar urgency. He stumbled into a battle between instinct and logic. "Look, listen to me," he said with newfound assertiveness, turning the situation onto its axis. "You need to start trusting me. If we're going to find your baby, I need you to breathe and focus. Can we do that?" A tentative nod followed, and as he guided her to find her grounding, he felt a distinction forming within himself. It wasn't just about safeguarding himself from Nathan's presence, it was about harnessing the strength he had begun to forge in the fires of his past. Once she stabilized, Tony quickly gestured for a couple of volunteers he recognized. "Get some flashlights and phones, spread out around the park. We're going to find her child." The urgency in his voice fueled the team. Moments later, the adrenaline surged. It was the first time he had let go of his own doubts and took decisive action. As she detailed the park's layout, arranging her memories into a cohesive plan, Tony felt a flicker of potential ignite within him. He was no longer simply a haunted figure, he was a leader, taking charge in a moment of chaos. Empowering others brought forth his own hidden capabilities, amplifying his sense of responsibility, but speculation swelled in the back of his mind. What if this woman was, somehow, an instrument of Nathan's game? What if he was being set up for failure yet again? Each stride toward the door drew him deeper into unknown territory. He had confronted his fears before, but never quite like this. With every step, the stakes heightened. He had the chance to redefine what mattered most to him, not just saving another and battling an unseen enemy, but pulling at the threads of his own identity again and again. Let us move. He signaled to the others gather around him, ready to spring into action just as urgency dripped from every gesture. The tension in the air transformed into a palpable force, but the question lingered like a ghost. Was he really ready to face whatever Nathan had planned? Then a figure loomed in the distance, shadowing the pathway ahead. His pulse quickened, doubts clashing with determination. Confrontation was inevitable now. What lay ahead could shatter or solidify everything he was fighting for. The figure drew closer, revealing a woman wrapped in a tattered coat, her face streaked with dirt and worry, an apparition that conjured echoes of Tony's past struggles. Heart racing, he wrestled with a surge of recognition, an awareness that what lay before him felt even more pressing than the woman they'd come to help. "Excuse me." The stranger's voice sliced through the tension, desperation laced with urgency. With a shaky hand, she gestured towards what appeared to be a playground, remnants of laughter and innocence still lingering in the air. "Did you see a child?" I think my baby was." Just before she could finish, Tony felt the weight of his own emotions pushing against the confines of his composure. It became clear this new woman, just like the one he'd been helping mere moments ago, was caught in a cycle of despair that felt all too familiar. A reflexive instinct to protect kicked in. He had seen enough of the cruel twists fate could deliver. "Yes," he said, his voice steadier than he felt, "but you need to calm down. I'm going to make sure we find your child, too. Just take a deep breath, okay?" The woman hesitated, her eyes glancing toward the playground, then back to him. But something in his tone resonated with her fragile state. Perhaps it was the sincerity he had unconsciously cultivated over the years, or maybe it was the unyielding need he felt to forge connections, however brief. As he pulled the other volunteers toward her, he paused, letting the cacophony encapsulate their shared tension. He felt a new clarity settling over him. No longer just a haunted figure or a man seeking to escape his past, he was transforming into someone who could handle crises, somebody with an obligation to act when the stakes were at their peak. "Listen closely," he said firmly, addressing the group they'd gathered. "We're facing two missing children. Split up, cover more ground. I want to know every detail about the last places these mothers saw their kids." The energy shifted, urgency became a binding force and, in return, he felt the adrenaline surge within him like a cauldron boiling over, invigorating, intoxicating. As volunteers branched off in different directions, he acknowledged the woman still standing before him, her eyes flashing with gratitude tinged with fear. "Let us go find your baby." With resolute purpose, he led her toward the park entrance, every step igniting his determination further, embodying a sense of responsibility he had previously underestimated. Then, like a shadow surfacing from his own thoughts, Nathan's name flitted across his mind. Though the weight of uncertainty loomed over him, it infused him with clarity rather than fear. The failures of the past no longer paralyzed him, they fortified his resolve to protect others from suffering the same fate. As they neared the playground, Tony caught sight of a small figure darting in and out of the crowd. The hairs on his neck stood on end, heartbeat synchronizing with the urgency of the moment. "Is that?" He breathed aloud, enveloped in disbelief and cautious optimism. The child's laughter rang out, fragile and pure, as if cutting through the fog of despair hanging over the park. Doubt momentarily flickered before being extinguished by a deep yearning to reconnect, to restore what had been lost. But an eerie sensation began wrapping around his gut, reminding him of the stakes that had risen further still. Yet, instead of hesitation, he leaned into this fear, embracing the new dynamic it brought forth. He needed to act, needed to confront both the outside chaos and the ominous grip of Nathan's shadow looming on the horizon. The reckoning was near, and he wasn't just stepping into the light for the women he was helping. He was unearthing a purpose that had long lain buried beneath insecurities and self-doubt. As they approached the child, a chilling voice echoed from behind him, one he recognized all too well. "You think you can save them?" The world around him halted, heart-pounding. The confrontation was finally here. The moment had arrived to face the darkness head-on. Tony turned slowly, the voice cutting through the frantic energy around him like a knife. The familiarity of Nathan's tone struck him deeper than any physical blow could. A simmering anger ignited within him as he processed the presence of the man who was once a shadow of his worst fears. "Nathan," he exhaled, grappling with a mix of dread and defiance. Every fiber of his being was tuned to the tumult around him, yet Nathan's calm demeanor, a stark contrast to the chaos of the moment, unnerved him. "What are you doing here?" "Just watching a show unfold," Nathan retorted, his eyes glinting with a predatory satisfaction. "All those years of saving people, Tony, and yet here you are, grappling with your own ghosts. Fancy that." The gravity of Nathan's words seeped into Tony's consciousness, igniting suffocating memories, betrayals, felt weaknesses, and the history of manipulation that tightened its grip on Tony's resolve. But beneath the surface of this raw confrontation, a deeper undercurrent was building, the undeniable strength that flourished when he put others' needs above his own. "Get away from me," Tony demanded, pulse quickening with flickers of past fear battling with newfound determination. He felt the mother beside him shift her weight, anxiety creeping into her stance. The instinct to protect flared up again. Nathan chuckled, undeterred. "You think it's that simple? Life isn't a fairy tale, Tony. It's messy, and those mothers you're trying to save, they're just another easy mark in this game." Something snapped inside Tony. He realized that Nathan's words, laced with contempt, mirrored an old measure of himself, a man who saw only darkness, who fled from responsibility instead of wrestling it to the ground. No more. Raw clarity shone as he grasped that even the shadows deserved a purpose, a chance at redemption, whether for Nathan or himself. In that moment, it wasn't just about finding the missing children anymore, it was about standing firm against the very fears that had once trampled him. "I'm not afraid of you," Tony declared, shaking off the echoes of his past. "I'm here for them, not for the likes of you." He locked eyes with the mother, sensing her confusion ripple through the air. She needed reassurance now more than ever as the confrontation distorted the frantic efforts to locate her child, lost in this crucible of shadows. "Stay close to me," he instructed, his tone unwavering. "We're going to find your baby, and nothing will stop us." As he turned back to face Nathan, feelings of dread began to alchemize into strategic intent. Whatever threat lingered had to be met head-on. He took inventory of his thoughts, calculating each breath, determining the best course of action. Years of dealing with adversity had honed him into someone alert, someone capable. "You don't get to decide the outcome here," Tony boldly stated, emboldened by newfound clarity. He found strength in his vulnerability, understanding that pretending to be invincible never bore fruit. "Then expose yourself for what you really are, just another pawn in a game far bigger than you," Nathan sneered, unable to mask the undercurrent of insecurity threading his words. But just as Tony felt the weight of Nathan's words, a sound broke through the air, a high-pitched giggle. His attention split toward the playground, momentarily eclipsing the confrontation. The child, blissfully unaware, was tossing a ball with another kid, laughter pure and unfiltered that he turned abruptly back to Nathan. "I won't to let you take this from me. Here and now, I break this cycle." Each word empowered him further, keen awareness swelling within, illuminating the stakes more profoundly than ever before. As the distance between Tony and Nathan narrowed, their eyes locked, each understanding that the next moment was crucial. With the past and present colliding, Tony felt the weight of fate surge, urging him to take that risk and confront the future he had always longed for. Suddenly, Nathan smirked, his gaze shifting, betraying the little patience he had left. "This isn't over, Tony. Not by a long shot." The tension wrapped around them, thick and palpable, as Tony braced for the inevitable clash. The time had come to face not just Nathan but the very essence of what he had been running from: uncertainty, fear, and a future that, for the first time, felt unwritten. What lay ahead would test not only his resolve but the depth of his commitment to those he fought for. The reckoning was ignited, and with it came an unwavering resolve to unravel the shadows that dared to claim him once more. Tony Romano stood at the park's edge, the weight of the past and the uncertainty of the future clashing in a storm of emotions. The confrontation with Nathan had awakened something deep within him, an unshakable determination to carve out a new legacy for himself and for Mia. It was no longer just a battle against his former life, it was a commitment to change, to rise from the ashes of chaos, and to redefine who he was meant to be. Taking a deep breath, he shifted his focus, channeling the urgency he felt for the mothers and their children. He had made a promise to help, and that promise ignited a fierce passion deep within his core. No longer would he be buried beneath the weight of fear or manipulation, he was stepping into the light, ready to lead with conviction. "Let us move!" Tony shouted, rallying the volunteers, his voice carrying clarity amidst the chaos. He faced the unknown with a newfound sense of purpose, directing their efforts with the precision of a seasoned leader. They split into teams, each determined to scour the park, fueled by the shared goal to protect the innocent. As he took off into the thick of the park, each stride resonated with power. A palpable surge of confidence coursed through him. He wasn't just Tony the Bull Romano, a name echoing with fear and intimidation. He was now a force for good, working to heal the wounds created by a life of loss and regret. The laughter of children danced through the air, a symphony of hope that transformed his internal struggle into action, a magnetic force pulling him toward purpose. Every fleeting moment he spent helping others became a building block of his newfound identity. He could feel the fragments of his past slipping away like sand as he moved further into the light of courage. Finding a small group of children playing near the swings, he felt a flicker of recognition. Each little face reflected his own longing to protect what was truly precious. It hit him that the purpose he had been chasing was right in front of him all along, not power or respect, but love and redemption. He called to the children, encouraging them to stay close, understanding that these small actions translated to larger victories. In the midst of this urgency, he received a call from Mia. Her voice floated through the phone, a mixture of anxiety and hope. "Dad, are you okay? I've been worried." Her concern shot straight to his heart, and he replied with unwavering confidence, "I'm out here helping some people, Mia. I'm doing everything I can to make things right. I'll see you soon." As he hung up, a profound sense of realization flooded over him. He wasn't doing this just for Mia, he was doing it for every child, every vulnerable soul impacted by choices made in darkness. Recollections of his past collided with present intentions, and clarity emerged from the chaos. He was building bridges, not walls, between himself and the world he wanted to embrace, but even as he immersed himself in this new purpose, Nathan's voice echoed ominously in the back of his mind. He knew the shadows still lingered, but now they were nothing more than reminders of where he had come from. He remained resolute, embracing the precariousness of life as an opportunity for growth, not a reason for retreat. Hours passed, and Tony worked tirelessly alongside the volunteers, his heart swelling with each small victory. Their search yielded success. One by one, lost children found their way back into their mother's arms, joy flooding the park with life and laughter once more. Each reunion marked another chapter of redemption written in the annals of his journey, steps toward unearthing a legacy far greater than he'd ever envisioned. Finally, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow around him, he spotted Mia by the park's entrance. Her face glowed with a warmth that cut through his uncertainty, anchoring him as she rushed toward him. "Dad!" Her embrace enveloped him, a cocoon woven with trust and hope. As he held her tightly, he felt a transformative moment, the stark realization that they had faced the demons of the past together and emerged stronger on the other side. "I'm proud of you, Tony," she whispered, her voice a balm that soothed his spirit. As darkness enveloped the park, he found himself standing tall, renewed in purpose. The shadows still lurked at the periphery of his life, but their power had diminished to flickers of memory. He had faced not only the remnants of his past but succeeded in transcending them. He had become a protector, a father, a man committed to rewriting his narrative, a rudder guiding both himself and Mia towards a brighter future. Right then, he recognized that this metamorphosis had been nothing short of remarkable. He was not just a survivor of his past but an architect of his future, a man ready to embrace every challenge with open arms. The world around him thrummed with vitality, the camaraderie he had forged amidst the chaos solidified his resolve. His journey towards growth and healing coursed through his veins, illuminating the importance of every step taken forward. As he looked into Mia's eyes, he understood that the best was yet to come. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, your support matters. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. We want to hear from you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of acting now.